I'm Gil Gershoni, and welcome to Dyslexic Design Thinking. Some people bring a book or a pair of headphones when they travel, but Harriet Riddell brings a sewing machine and a bicycle. Since 2012, Harriet has been making a living as a free motion embroidery artist. She founded her company In Stitch U at the university in the UK, and ever since then, she traveled all over the world from Kenya to the Himalayas and beyond. She's here today to talk about her life, her work, and of course, her dyslexia. Harriet, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Your work is so unique and your approach is so different and special. I'm almost hesitant to even try to describe it to our audience. How do you describe what you do?
I call myself a textile performance artist. I use a sewing machine as my medium and I stitch people and places from life. So I call myself In Stitch U, and it's a little play on words there. Thank you, Dad. He came up with that one. And I document the moving world around me onto canvas using a line of thread and a whole bundle of different coloured fabrics, which I applique onto my work to add colour.
How did you get started? How did you find this technique and style? And tell me a little bit about how this all began for you.
I actually learned how to sew when I was about 5. My mum taught me. I've never seen her behind a sewing machine before. She's a crocheter. And my grandmother, who I should add is also dyslexic, is an artist in Canada. And she would make me these beautiful textile cards and send them over. So I grew up in England. So that was a big inspiration. And she taught me this free motion embroidery technique when I was about 10. So it took this very expensive 3-year art degree to sort of find myself back to where I began at 10. And throughout my teenage years, I played around with the sewing machine and stitched butterfly wings. And my teacher during textile classes at high school, it was the only class this ever happened. She'd say, if you get stuck, ask Harriet. There wasn't many other classes that happened, I can assure you. But I kind of just got the sewing machine. So then fast forward to university, I take my sewing machine into the life drawing room and I start to stitch the naked models. Well, you know that classes tend to be silent. Everyone's very concentrated. They're focusing on the models, and the sewing machine is not a silent tool. So it's there going while I'm trying to capture the model. But fortunately, my tutor was very supportive and everyone forgave me for disrupting their piece. And I found my voice.
When you look for subject matters or locations, how do you choose the settings? How do you choose the subject matter?
Well, initially when I started back at university, that's the biggest challenge, is to be inspired and to find that inspiration. So after the life drawing room, I got a free packet of crisps out of a vending machine, which was a great day. So I thought, I'm going to stitch the vending machine. So I took my sewing machine down into the corridor in the university because I didn't know what to do. I was scratching my head. I'd stitched the textile room already. And then the head of art and design came by and she asked me, have you not got anywhere better to work? And I explained, I'm stitching the vending machine, which sort of gave me great license to be working in this unusual place. And I kind of enjoyed how it got a little bit under her skin that I was somewhere where I shouldn't be, but it also gave me a fair license to be there. So then I would go to the laundrette on campus. I always walked out richer in the laundrette as a student. I used to find pound coins here and then. So that was like a lucky space for me. And then cafes and pubs, because obviously using a sewing machine, you need a table, a chair, and a plug socket. So I was kind of on the hunt for plug sockets, and I was very open to my stories that I was going to create. And I think half the fun was not really knowing where I was going. It was sort of incredibly spontaneous, and I got a wheeled suitcase and started going into London. My university was about 40 minutes north of London. And I'd get off the train and then I'd see someone interesting and follow them for a bit. And then maybe find an interesting looking cafe and ask if I can stitch in there. And they'll say, no, you can't. So then I'll leave there and go and ask another one until someone says, yes, sure, plug in there.
You were saying that part of the way you discovered your medium and your voice was through failing forward and in order to try to find it. I find so often is that my mom used to say that failing is not trying. If you try and you don't like, now you know. Or if you try and you are, maybe a beginner, then you get a chance to see where you are in the process. And if you love it, then you'll discover more of that pursuit. And I think that's very true to dyslexia, to creativity, is that we fail. There's certain things we're just not really that good at. And we keep trying and we have to get up and do it again and find other ways of expressing ourselves. I think a lot of people would just be uncomfortable doing any kind of creative expression in public because the chances are that you're going to maybe fail, right? Or that maybe you make a mistake or that something might go wrong. How do you embrace that? Like when you're stitching in public, what do you consider a mistake and how do you work with it?
It's a good question. When I work in public, there are no mistakes.
Good answer.
Yeah, because usually there's an audience and I just have to keep going. I think with the audience, that's how the kind of performance comes alive within my work. And it's very soft performance, as you can imagine. I'm just sat sewing, but I still feel like I'm performing. And before I set up, I'm very anxious and nervous. That never goes away. I guess like any standing in front of anyone on stage, I suppose. And I take that energy and just bring it into that work. And I kind of thrive from that energy. And it allows me to keep going and not second guess what I'm doing. And maybe a line didn't go to plan. There's no time to change that. And I'm not sitting there with an unpicker and I'm picking things. I just keep on going. And actually, you're creating a bigger picture. And later on, what may have not been to plan just sort of becomes a part of the picture. So, yeah. But if I'm working alone in my studio, which happens, that voice that tells you you've done something wrong or that wasn't to plan is much louder. And I struggle with that because things take me a lot longer and the focus isn't there. And so it's by being out in the public, it sort of, I don't know, it just drives me forward.
Well, I know you and I talked about this in our previous conversation about how do we find the optimal environment so we can be our best selves. And I know it's very hard sometimes for me to sit still because everything is so exciting, everything is so stimulating that I almost need to have my environment match that stimulation that then calms me down. If I'm in a quiet environment, I can go completely mad. Like if I have one project to do, I'm so stressed out, but give me 25 projects to do, I'm in my happy place. Like, cause I just learned that that's how my energy, my creativity, my brain works. And if I feed that stimulation, then I'm almost sound like regulating my best self. I call it dancing with my dyslexia because sometimes my
Nice.
dyslexia is very hungry and you have to feed it. Like I want to be disoriented. So I just have to create environments that are just going to be overwhelming for most, but are just so soothing for me. And I can't get enough of it. Do you relate to any of this? Is this anything that you experience?
Someone said before that you can take ages to find your focus or the inability to focus. And there's times where it doesn't come. Yeah, there's other times that when you are focused, you can't unfocus. You're just on a roll and you can't tear yourself away from it. And I guess that is a happy place as well when you find that, like you get lost in that. I can definitely resonate with just being in chaos. as long as that chaos is feeding the subject that I'm focusing on. So, yeah, working on a busy street with buses and people shouting and life going in front of me, that like allows me to focus. So I'm sat there because I'm absorbing that into the artwork. But if I was sat on that street trying to write up like my latest invoice to someone, like that is not going to help. It's hard enough writing an invoice in a quiet studio.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I do understand that. And currently I've got a lot of big plates spinning and I hadn't really thought about it the way you said, but I think I do quite enjoy the mayhem. I'm just trying to ride it. As long as you're riding it on your surfboard and you're kind of ticking boxes and keeping everyone happy, then that's okay. You just don't want to fall off that surfboard.
I'm so curious to know, how did you start exploring powering your machine? So you were going to cafes, you were getting permission, sometimes not, to plug here and to plug there. And then what was the first moment where you're like, okay, I want to be in more remote environment. I want to be more in the public eye. What was the first time that you had to kind of brainstorm around thinking about how to power the sewing machine in a creative way?
I had done a few street stitches outside my studio, but I had longed to go to India. And since I was quite a young girl, there's a film called The Little Princess, and it's really caught my imagination as a child. And I collected saris and shisha mirrors, and I enjoyed the Hindu gods and all the artwork around them. So it only felt right that once I had enough money saved up, I would take my sewing machine to India. And it kind of coincided with a friend of mine who's a busker, or he's a musician. He said he powers his amp with a motorcycle battery and an inverter. And couldn't that power my sewing machine? So I tried it. I took my sewing machine up to the Bluebell Woods and with a mirror and stitched my portrait in the woods alone this time. And it worked. So I picked up a motorcycle battery in Delhi and I took my inverter, and that allowed me 2 or 3 hours per battery to stitch wherever I wanted. And I took a portable table and chair, and that freedom was so exciting. I felt drunk with freedom. And my first stitch in Delhi was in this really quaint little park that could have been in England. I think I was so intimidated by the city. It was just so much to take on that I wasn't quite ready to just dive in there with my stitching. So I found a very small, quaint place and stitched there. But I got lots of lovely reactions from children and people around me, and it just built my confidence, which then I slowly started to explore more and more places around India.
And when did you start to introduce the bike?
I was actually at Glastonbury Festival. I worked in the green craft area, which prides themselves on having no electricity at all. And my batteries, the festival's on for 5 days, so they kept dying, and I was struggling to find anywhere to charge them up. I was just doing scenes of other craftsmen making things out of wood or textiles. So the following year, I came back with a bicycle. I thought people could pedal power their own portraits, because also the batteries are fantastic for sort of a scene, but portraits require a lot more energy because of the hair and the pace I work. It's very fast, and so I wouldn't get through very many. So I thought, why don't I get my subject to pedal power their own portrait? So I get them to pay me and they ride a bike, and then I stitch their portrait on the bike with the power they create.
Do you find when people pedal for portraits, they kind of open up, they tell you things that maybe otherwise wouldn't?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, whether the portrait sitting, even without the bike, I find people do it, tell me all sorts of interesting things. But when I'm stitching a scene rather than their portrait, that is nice because people do really just relax and talk about all sorts. And you learn about that person And I really encourage that. Like, tell me your secrets.
Oh, really? And what's the reaction? Do they?
uh, well, initially, like anyone, people get a bit like they struggle to talk about themselves. They can do initially, but that's all I want them to do is just talk at me and let me listen, and that just I just focus with that kind of natter, and then it really does sort of give me little words they'll say will just jump out at me, and then I'll stitch them into the artwork, and which then sort of brings them in, I guess.
That's so cool. Have you done it before when you had multiple bikers riding at the same time, like an orchestra of bikers?
Not quite an orchestra, but I have a full size bike, and I also have like an A frame. So these guys called Electric Pedals, they're from Peckham. They designed and built me this gear. I did try and make some on my own, and that was a disaster. So they're absolute pros in their construction of and know all the sciencey bits because I don't quite understand to the level they do. But also, they built me an A-frame bike which has a seat and two pedals on it. So the thing folds up. There's no wheels. It doesn't really resemble a bike, but it allows someone to pedal power. The reason I got that was so I could travel abroad with it, because I took my full-size bike to Switzerland once and it was a nightmare. To get anywhere, I needed the public to help me because I just had so much stuff. It was so heavy. And they did, of course, that people are very kind, but it wasn't one to repeat. So the A-frame bike comes apart, just adds another 30 kilograms to the mix. And I can have both of them set up. So people chatting, and it sort of, I draw the attention of a lot of children as well. They love it.
I saw a video of you of stitching a portrait of a young man. And I think you told him, like, you have to keep pedaling because I need more power. Cause I think he was sort of like falling behind a little bit. And you can see as soon as you told him, like, he's like, he just really started to work, and then your machine came back to life. And I think that there's something so interesting in the rhythm and the texture of embroidery, as you were mentioning in your early days when you were doing some nude drawings. And everything is so quiet, but then your machine is sort of thumping away and creating this sort of almost drum beat rhythm. Tell me a little bit about the relationship to the rhythm and the textures of the medium for you. Do you ever wake up in the middle of the night dreaming in sewing machine beats and rhythms? I mean, what's your relationship to tactility, the full body, the sound, the overall experience for you?
My art teacher used to always say, while we're drawing, like, find the rhythm of the face. And I think, what's he going on about? What rhythm? And then I think by using the sewing machine, I really found it, and having that single line forced this sort of, oh, there's like a path and there is a rhythm of the face. And so now when I teach classes, I'm up there going, find the rhythm of the face. And they're all looking at me, what are you talking about? But yeah, sometimes I think I'm fed up of stitching, but as soon as I get on it and that needle hits the canvas and there's like these little stitch lines, it's just like, yeah, I like the tactile nature of it. And I think the spatial awareness is a sort of power that I only was really told I had during a dyslexia test. Like back in the education system, you'd have these sort of, they would test you to check your dyslexia. And of course, I'd spell cat T-A-C, and everything would kind of come out in different ways. But when it came to the shapes bit, like, I had no problem. You had to sort of organize the shapes to fit a block. And I think that is a part of my dyslexia that really helps me negotiate a scene that I'm looking at and then knowing how to rebuild that onto this.
It's almost like water. There's a certain sort of dance that happens with it. And I don't know if you feel the same way when you're looking at, like, if you paint a stitching outside. Like for me I'm branding, graphic design, advertising. Like I can look at visual compositions and I can tell they speak to me. Like I can tell when there is imbalances. And I think it's definitely, to your point, I think it's definitely spatial reasoning. It's pattern recognition. But when you're not dyslexic, when you're talking about pattern recognition, it's like, oh, so you see patterns. No, I'm seeing almost the pattern between the pattern. Yeah, it's so interesting. It's so interesting.
Yeah. And it doesn't really stop, does it? It's everywhere. It's, I don't know, like you're always looking and seeing. So you can see those rhythms and patterns or assessing other people's work, like the poster on the back of the loo in the service station. And you're like looking at how they've composed that and thinking about this and the sort of flow. Or then you see the fire extinguisher and how that looks so sweet next to the drain pipe there. And there's somehow that calls you, even though it's just a fire extinguisher.
Tell me, how did the pandemic help you as an artist evolve, and where did it take you?
So the pandemic, yeah, everything got cancelled. I was working towards a show with a gallery in Italy. It was kind of quite a big deal for me, and that was opening in Milan 2020, which sadly they were hit first. So that was the first thing to get cancelled, and all the talks, workshops. Yeah, it was a crazy time for everyone. But I started stitching portraits via Zoom. That's where my Zoom portraits kind of started. And fortunately, I had enough 4G at home. We live off grid in the woods, so it's kind of an unusual setting. But I managed to get enough data to then have people visit me via my laptop, and I would stitch their portrait on my porch. And that was cool because it opened up the whole world. Because I like to work from life, before I would have to have someone come, if they wanted their portrait stitched, they'd come and sit in front of me and I'd stitch them. So that kind of limited my audience, I suppose. So by opening it up onto Zoom, I was getting people book portraits from Spain, America, Australia, India, Sweden, different places. And I got to hear their story of the pandemic. How is your government dealing with it? How are you dealing with it? What are your rules? So I still had that interaction and learning about other people and culture. And that's everything that feeds my art, and meeting new people from the safety of my own home. So thank God for Zoom.
And did it change your, obviously it opened up to the world, but at the same time it puts you in a place where, I know when I do so much work in virtual and Zoom around the world, is that you're always with company, but you're also quite alone. There is that sort of barrier because of that, you're on the screen, you're not in person, you're only seeing part of me, not my whole body. And, as a dyslexic, sensory driven individual, I thrive when I can see your body language. Like, I thrive when I can see your temperature, like everything I'm reading all of it, and I'm embracing all of my senses to relate, which I'm assuming that when you're doing in the wild stitching, then you get all that from the environment. Did that change your relationship to portrait and stitching because of the medium?
I guess it comes from a needs must. So, of course, having someone with you is the best. But it's kind of the next best thing, because after that, it's a photograph. And
Yeah.
that's like, who is this person? People send me a photograph of their nephew and I haven't met him. And it's even in a split few moments chatting to someone, you really have a feel of them, a little feel of their character. And you learn a lot in a very short amount of time by a chat. Obviously, if you were meeting someone face to face, it would be better. But I think you still get a lot from just seeing someone move, even if it is like on a screen. And you can still hear their story as well. I think audibly, I really enjoy listening to people talk to me about themselves while I work. Yeah, I think that really helps, which of course a photograph you can't get. So it really did save my biscuits. I'm not sure that's a
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. I want to go a little bit back to the beginning. When did you find out you had dyslexia?
I was thinking about this, and because my dad was dyslexic and my grandma's dyslexic, there was never really a moment, like I just always knew I was dyslexic.
Oh, really?
In a way, like I remember being in, maybe I was 9, and one of the girls in the class had been like diagnosed as dyslexic, and being like, well, I'm dyslexic too, but I don't need a diagnosis. Obviously that came later, but I don't know. I just sort of maybe it's from my dad telling me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I just really struggled with your standard dyslexia stuff as a kid, writing and spelling and reading pretty slowly. And so I can't really think of a time before. I've just sort of always known that I was, I suppose.
And how did being you raised, obviously, with your grandmother, your father, dyslexic? What was their relationship to their dyslexia as you were growing up?
It was never really a thing, I guess. It was just like, I'm dyslexic, we're dyslexic. Just, I don't know. I think my mum helped, like, my other my dad's mum, she's the artist. She's the one who's well, she's dyslexic. And then my mum on my mum's side, she's like very quick, very sharp with words, and she's like a Scrabble master and all this goes right beyond me. And we used to play Scrabble with her. I still can only get 3-letter words. She gave me this little like computer thing back in year 2000, I guess, which was meant to help you with Scrabble, but it helped me spell. So I would use that as like a spell check, I guess.
Tell me, where are you in your journey toward embracing your dyslexia?
Well, I think I'm very fortunate to be my own boss and just create my own path in this world, which I love. I think that's essential. And perhaps, I guess that's come from dyslexia and the way I think and just needing that freedom to be myself. I think my biggest struggles are, I mean, kind of superficially, they're my mess. And you're talking about your studio and the mess. And I can get really bogged down in like order and trying to order myself. Yeah, I can like order myself around the world, and I enjoy booking travel and like linking my journeys and be very organized or spontaneous, and that's okay. There's no fear there. And but when it comes to like tidying up my desk, it's just like I find that can be really overwhelming. Not really sure like how to deal with where to put things. Like it's really minor, but yeah, it really plays on my mind. Like my studio currently this is not my studio. I'm in Denise's studio. She's a children's book illustrator, and her studio is always immaculate. And mine is not. It's just chaos, and sometimes I find that quite hard. If I'm like, sometimes I strive for this kind of. I wish I could be really neat and have order all the time, and I feel like there's a battle.
Yeah, but if it was all nice and tidy, it probably drives you mad. You'd be like, now what? What is left, you know? Do you think?
True. Although, like, my partner just spent like 2 days. Me and my son went away, and he like did this deep tidy of our house, and it's been great. Came back, I'm like,
Oh, there you go.
I can't like do it. It's just like I think every object opens so many things in my brain that it's like you get lost in. It takes half a day to do like half a meter, and yeah. So I think that's probably like from my day to day life. Those are sort of my challenges of like trying to master a sort of space that I'm happy, but I can work within it. Like I just squirrel on in the mayhem, but there is something that in me that wishes I could be a bit more like Denise.
Do you have any maybe tips or tricks that you use to make your life a little easier?
Well, I think the overwhelm, I think what I'm talking about is overwhelm, I suppose. And that's where it becomes all a bit much. And exercising the power to like step over that and just realize it's okay. It's all right. I'm okay. We're okay. Life's all right. And when that hits, that I feel like so much more relaxed. So it's sort of I'm trying to get better at it, like not getting too frustrated at myself. I think that's like the biggest thing, isn't it? You get this frustration and just trying to step over it and ask for help as well. Like I still need to sometimes ask someone to help me come in and sort my studio out. I have a friend called Laura, and she's a very linear thinker, and she's brilliant because she'll just sort of, I'll talk to her about all my ideas, and she'll just be like, right, let's just talk about this one idea. And she sort of helps me with my studio. And so that's okay. That's all right. And maybe I bring something to her life too that's a little bit more muddled and crazy.
For sure. One of the things that we talk about with dyslexic design thinking, that we focus about the strength of the dyslexia mind. And always, as a child, I was always labeled as a dyslexic disability, reading, writing, and spelling. And I learned that maybe it's not just that. Maybe I'm a whole person. Maybe it's also my abilities, because my brain is dyslexic. Everything I do, from creating, for art, from messiness, from talking, it's all dyslexic through the dyslexia mind. So I start to talk about this idea that it's not disability, maybe a little bit, part of it, and maybe it's not just an ability, but when you have a relationship with your whole self, it becomes a hyper ability, because at least you have a relationship with it. What would you say is your hyper ability?
I suppose it's connecting with people. I think I enjoy people, and I enjoy connecting with them, but also being able to connect with someone as myself, but also with the art, and let the art connect with them too. It's like this three-way thing happening. And I imagine that is a hyper ability, because I don't think there's lots of people out there doing that. I think that's what makes me special.
Mm-hmm.
Is this connection between myself, but then also you realize that your pictures and your art connect with people. And then it's this like the rhythm of that, I suppose. And but I don't know what allows that or what makes that, but definitely gets me excited, and it's sort of what makes me turn up to work every day, is having that connection that goes beyond just a pretty picture, I suppose, on the wall.
Have you met, through your travels, have you met other fellow dyslexics?
Well, probably. I'm not so sure. Some people I meet and I think, you've got to be dyslexic. I actually met a friend. I was at a festival a few weekends ago, and I just like sorted out my tent because I needed to get it in order and like create my little nest and have it, which takes probably hours longer than the average person. And then I saw another friend of mine who's an artist. She makes perfume. She has perfume workshops, and her tent she looked like she was at the beginning stage of her. She just had a crazy tent around. And I thought, I wonder if she's dyslexic. And then she didn't. She said a little while later, without prompting, "Oh, I'm dyslexic." So I was like, knew it, spotted you. But I do think I'm surrounded by neurodiverse people. I think I've created a life, surrounded by different kinds of thinkers. My friend group, a lot of creatives, a lot of self-employed people, very disproportionately to, I think, a lot of other friend groups potentially. Yes, I guess that's what makes me feel normal.
What advice would you give dyslexics that maybe are yet to embrace their gift?
I suppose be patient with yourself, and just be like open and ready to embrace your ideas. Yeah. And it will, like, you'll find your thing. It will happen as long as you're receptive and you're willing to experiment, I suppose, we're not using the word fail, but experiment. And every time something doesn't work or feel good, that's just learning that it's not the road for you. Yeah. And that, like, I don't know, there's lots of people out there who, you're not alone. There's lots of different thinkers out there. And
I find that sometimes when I look for things, I tend to not find them because I'm looking in the wrong places. I already have preconceived assumptions about what it's supposed to be like, or how am I going to make a living, or how is it going to work out? Or so we start to sort of critique ourselves before we even created a mess, and just allowing myself to think about what did used to give me joy. It could be anything. When I was 10 years old, what gave me joy? Oh, it was just like, doodling or drawing a tree in a single line. Start right there. pull on that thread, because that's the indicator that your body, your talent, your psyche, your emotional well-being is soothed by some of those actions. And if that's the only things that you get out of it, isn't that enough already? But the thing that happens when we pursue those things that give us those pieces of joy, and that's almost the point of it, then they attract more of it. Then you find more of those friends that are maybe also neurodiverse, or they're also dense differently, or that do other things that inspire you. And the more you collect those moments, the more it comes into your own. And you can never imagine, I mean, I don't know if you could have, but I know that I would have never imagined I would end up where I am today if I planned it. I know I just continued pursuing, going toward things that gave me joy, things that I learned I was good at, wrestle with things I wasn't so good at, and understand myself better. But I would be surprised if you would have arrived here because your intention was to power a sewing machine by a bike and sketch portraits. Like, how do you even come up with that? That is a dyslexia thing. Like, you came with it because you just pursued all the little bits and pieces that remind you of your family, your grandma, your art, just being at your maybe father's pub and learning how to talk to strangers and living off the grid and figuring out how to be resourceful and figure out how to get power. But then the power comes from the collaborator, which you're sketching, which becomes this whole conversational ecosystem. Like, how do you even start to imagine that, And I think to your advice to people that haven't embraced dyslexia yet is to look at yourself as a whole person. And to cherish the things that you're so good at, because if nothing else, it would allow you to climb the challenging mountain of reading and writing with a bag or with a suitcase of the things that give you joy.
That's very cool. Very beautiful.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it is like breaking down, because when you ask me that, it's like, where do you begin? But just the tiny steps, isn't it? It's just what's in front of you, what makes you happy, what's this moment here, and then rather than thinking the huge mountain that you're about to climb, which is where the overwhelm hits in, and you think, who am I? What do I do? It's just a little step. Like, what makes me happy today? And yeah,
at the end of the day, everything is a little step. There's no really big steps. When you take a big step, you miss the steps, because the little steps is how we're humans. We have to walk, Walking is falling and catching yourself every time you take a step. And it's like, that's the little step. It's just like, if you want to get across the street, take a little step before you know it, you're across the street of whatever you're trying to do. And it becomes a lot easier to sort of, if nothing else, enjoy the journey and find the things that give you joy that you didn't even know because you just crossed the street, That's all you did. And it's like, oh yeah, I should sketch that.
Yeah. And I think something like focus as a human can really only do one thing at a time. And your focus is so precious and should be like cherished. And that's why like there's all these distracting things like your Instagram scrolling, and it's like that's stealing from your focus. You have to use it very carefully. And I think that when you kind of realize that, it's really helped me find my focus, I guess, and just understanding its like value and its potential, because I think you can take it for granted and like, why am I doing all these things? It's like, because you can only do one of them at a time.
I just want to thank you for being so honest with us today, Harriet, and joining us today and sharing your story with our audience. I know it's going to mean the world for everybody. We'll make sure to have your websites and your projects and links to all of your social in the podcast notes. And just thank you very much again. Really appreciate you.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed our conversation today, be sure to subscribe to this series wherever you get your podcasts. Visit dyslexicdesignthinking.com to learn more about our latest initiatives, including Dear Dyslexia, the Postcard Project, or to book Gil to speak at your next event or conference. Stay connected on Instagram at Dyslexic Design Thinking, or drop us a line at dyslexic@gershoni.com to receive our monthly newsletter and learn more about our upcoming programming. Dyslexic Design Thinking is produced by Gershoni Creative. Until next time, be well.